The most iconic 80s actresses helped define the decade and ensured 1980s movies had a lasting legacy. The 80s were a pivotal turning point in Hollywood. Teen movies achieved their peak, and some of the most enduring and beloved franchises made their big screen debuts. This opened the door for several lesser 80 actresses to carve out their status as icons of the decade. These actresses also proved that they could hold their own in action movies, dramas, and horror movies, and they led the way for a revolution for women in film. Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep stands as Hollywood's most acclaimed actress. She holds the record for most Academy Award nominations, a staggering 21, winning 3 Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The Iron Lady. It all began in 1978 when she picked up her first nomination for The Deer Hunter. But in the 1980s, Streep established herself as the best actress of her generation with 6 Oscar nominations in the decade. Her films during this decade include The French Lieutenant's Woman, Sophie's Choice, Silkwood, Out of Africa, Ironweed, and A Cry in the Dark. Streep's career is still as strong, if not stronger, than it was back in the 80s. Most recently, she had starring roles in Little Women, Don't Look Up, in the TV shows Big Little Lies and Only Murders in the Building. Looking back at her career, it's undeniable that she was one of the most iconic 80s actresses and one of the most prominent actresses in the history of cinema. Glenn Close. Glenn Close had one of the most successful and critically acclaimed filmographies of any 80s actress. After a successful run on Broadway, Close made her film debut in 1982's The World According to Garp, receiving a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination. She received 2 more Oscar nominations the next 2 years, for The Big Chill and The Natural, before transitioning into leading lady status. 2 of Close's most memorable roles, Alex Forrest in Fatal Attraction and the Marquise de Merteuil in Dangerous Liaison, earned her 2 lead actress Oscar nominations to close out the decade, meaning she had 5 Oscar nominations in 7 years, for the first 5 movies she ever starred in. Close would go on with her successful career, but has yet to win an Oscar, despite 8 nominations. Her most recent nomination came in 2021 for Best Supporting Actress for Hillbilly Elegy. Michelle Pfeiffer. Often considered one of the most beautiful faces ever to grace the silver screen, Michelle Pfeiffer's filmography proves she's also a versatile and eclectic performer. She received her first major role in Grease 2, but her true breakout came in Brian De Palma's 1983 crime film, Scarface, as a cocaine-addicted trophy wife to Al Pacino's Tony Montana. She also appeared in the cult classic The Witches of Eastwick, before receiving critical acclaim for her role in Jonathan Demme's 1988 comedy, Married to the Mob. Pfeiffer received 2 consecutive Oscar nominations for her supporting role in 1988's Dangerous Liaisons and her leading turn in 1989's The Fabulous Baker Boys. Her career would carry on through the 90s, when she picked up her 3rd Oscar nomination for Love Field. Despite a short break in the middle of the 2000s, she returned stronger than ever, recently receiving a Golden Globe nomination for her leading role in the 2020 dark comedy French Exit. She also joined the MCU as Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp. Kathleen Turner. Kathleen Turner rose to prominence at the beginning of the decade thanks to her performance in Lawrence Kasdan's neo-noir Body Heat. A string of commercial and critical successes followed, including Romancing the Stone, Preetsy's Honor, The Accidental Tourist, The War of the Roses, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. For her performance in the 1986 comedy Peggy Sue Got Married, Turner received an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. Despite a slight career slowdown in the 90s after her rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, Turner has been a steady presence on TV and in the occasional film ever since, and is perhaps best known more recently for her role in The Kominsky Method. He also appeared in the TV shows Californication, and in 2022 made a rare return to the movies, with The Swearing Jar and The Estate. Molly Ringwald. To this day, Molly Ringwald remains the undisputed queen of teen films. Thanks to the consecutive triple act of 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink, Ringwald established herself as a teen movie star and an icon for an entire generation. Ringwald's later films, including The Pickup Artist and For Keeps, were commercially successful, cementing her place as one of the biggest box office draws of the decade. Her career waned in the 90s after infamously turning down the lead roles in Pretty Woman and Ghost, but she began to play into her reputation with her roles later in life. She cameoed in Not Another Teen Movie, which spoofed many of her teenage comedies, took on a role in Gem and the Holograms, and then played an adult role in a new teen comedy franchise as Mrs. Flynn in the Kissing Booth trilogy. She also played Mary Andrews in the CW series Riverdale. Jessica Lange. One of the most lauded 80s actresses, Jessica Lange had her breakthrough in the 1976 King Kong remake. However, her most successful year would be 1983, thanks to her roles in Tootsie and Frances. She received Oscar nominations for both and won Best Supporting Actress for Tootsie. Lange would receive another 2 nominations during the 80s for Country and Sweet Dreams. While her filmography during the second half of the decade included mostly low-budget films, her performances were always highly praised. Lange has continued her success and picked up 2 more Oscar nominations in the 90s, winning her second for Blue Sky. She has since become a mainstay on horror television as one of the most beloved recurring actors in the American Horror Story franchise. Throughout her roles in the series, she won a Golden Globe Award for the debut season, with 3 other nominations and 2 Primetime Emmy wins for the first season, and for Coven with 3 other nominations. Whoopi Goldberg. In 1985, Whoopi Goldberg received her breakthrough thanks to her performance as Silly in Steven Spielberg's period drama, The Color Purple. Goldberg's work earned her an Oscar nomination, making her the only Black woman to earn a lead actress nomination during the 80s. While Goldberg lost to Geraldine Page for her role in The Trip to Bountiful, Goldberg picked up a second Oscar nomination 5 years later and won this time for her supporting turn in the supernatural romantic drama Ghost. Between 1985 and 1988, Goldberg made 7 films, including Penny Marshall's directorial debut, Jumpin' Jack Flash. A gifted comedian, Goldberg also hosted multiple HBO comic relief specials alongside fellow comedians Robin Williams and Billy Crystal. In 2002, Goldberg became one of the few actors to achieve the EGOT, winning a Grammy in 1986 for a comedy album, an Oscar in 1990 for Ghost, and both a Tony and Emmy in 2002. Jennifer Beals. Although she didn't act in many major movies, Jennifer Beals remains one of the most well-known 80s actresses. Beals debuted in My Bodyguard before achieving international fame with 1983's Flashdance. The film received negative reviews from critics, but was a surprising box office success, earning Beals a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress, Musical or Comedy. The movie has since become one of the most beloved 80s musical movies, and Beals remains known to this day for that role. Beals appeared opposite Sting in 1985's The Bride and played a leading role in 1989's Vampire's Kiss, one of Nicolas Cage's most underrated movies. While she never replicated Flashdance's success, the film was enough to cement her reputation as one of the most beloved 80s actresses. Beals enjoyed a career resurgence over the past few years, with roles in Taken, Swamp Thing, The L Word, Generation Q, The Book of Boba Fett, and Law & Order, Organized Crime. Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher became an instant star thanks to her role in George Lucas' 1977 space opera Star Wars. As Leia Organa, Fisher redefined the role of the female lead in action-adventure movies. She quickly became an 80s icon thanks to her instantly memorable fashion and hairstyle, active role in the story, and influence on other female characters. Fisher's career post-Star Wars consisted of supporting roles in numerous films. Other than Star Wars, her biggest roles in the 80s came in Hannah and Her Sisters and When Harry Met Sally. Carrie Fisher also became a successful author, screenwriter, and script doctor. While she mostly stepped back as a full-time actor, she still took on roles in her later years, including a return to the Star Wars franchise for the sequel trilogy, although she died before the last movie in the franchise was released into theaters. Sigourney Weaver. After her breakthrough role in 1979's Alien, Sigourney Weaver dominated the 80s. The first half of the decade saw her play leading roles in critically acclaimed films like The Year of Living Dangerously and blockbusters like Ghostbusters. She would climb to the peak of her success in the decade's second half, receiving Academy Award nominations for 3 of her most successful films, 1986's Aliens and 1988's Gorillas in the Mist and Working Girl. Weaver would say goodbye to the decade by reprising her role as Dana Barrett in 1989's Ghostbusters 2, cementing her place as one of the most iconic 80s actresses. While the Oscar nominations were over when it came to Weaver, she continued to get big roles for the next 3 decades, returning to both the Alien and Ghostbusters franchises, and also picking up big roles in Galaxy Quest, Avatar, A Monster Calls, and the MCU series The Defenders. Alfre Woodard. Despite critics considering her one of the most versatile and accomplished 80s actresses, Alfre Woodard remains unjustly underrated. Woodard earned an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress for 1983's Cross Creek and won the Primetime Emmy for her role in Hill Street Blues. Part of what makes many critics overlook her is that Woodard spent most of the decade as a highly acclaimed television actress and had notable smaller roles in films like 1988's Scrooged and 1989's Miss Firecracker. Woodard remains acting today. She has taken on no less than 3 roles in the MCU, with an important secondary role in Captain America, Civil War, a villain role in Netflix's Luke Cage, and the voice role of Mimi in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. She also had big TV roles in State of Affairs and See, and starred in movies like The Book of Clarence, The Gray Man, and the upcoming remake of Salem's Lot. Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis made her film debut as the ultimate final girl, Laurie Strode, in John Carpenter's seminal slasher Halloween in 1978. Establishing herself as a scream queen, Curtis later played leading roles in several other slasher movies in the 1980s, including Prom Night, Terror Train, and Halloween 2. It ran in the family, as her mother Janet Leigh starred in what many consider the first slasher movie in Psycho in 1960. However, she wasn't just a horror icon and went on to have a varied career. The 1983 comedy Trading Places earned her a BAFTA Award for Best Supporting Actress while providing some much-needed diversity to her resume, paving the way for her to become one of the most popular 80s actresses. In 1988, she received further critical acclaim and a BAFTA nomination for her role in the beloved heist comedy, A Fish Called Wanda. While it took her many years to get there, Curtis finally won an Oscar in 2023 for her role in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Oprah Winfrey. Looking at her career, Oprah Winfrey remains best known for her role as a major television star and one of the most powerful women in Hollywood. Indeed, she's one of the longest-running television hosts, with her talk show lasting 25 years, from 1986 to 2011. However, Winfrey rose to prominence during the mid-80s, earning an Oscar nomination for her supporting turn in The Color Purple. This was an important role in her career as she played Sophia and later produced a remake in 2023, with Danielle Brooks taking on that role. Oprah Winfrey only appeared in 2 more movies in the 1980s and mainly focused on television afterward. However, her name quickly became synonymous with the 80s, cementing her as one of the decade's undeniable icons. She has since used her name to produce movies like Beloved, Precious, and Selma,